In 2009, British Airways began an all-business class Airbus A318 service between London City Airport and New York's JFK Airport. This elusive service was terminated in 2020 as a victim of the pandemic. This is the glamorous side of the type's relationship with British Airways. However, did you know that the story starts an entire decade earlier? In this video, we aim to show the history of the British Airways A318 from start to history, shed light on how the plane almost became a much more integral part of the BA fleet than it actually did, and show you how the type's actual career panned out. Back in the late 1990s, the British Airways route network was much different from what it is today. In addition to their hub at London Heathrow, they also had regional hubs at Birmingham and Manchester. These hubs played host to smaller, approximately 100-seat aircraft, such as the Boeing 737-200. By the mid to late 1990s, these aircraft were beginning to show their age in terms of efficiency, avionics, cabin product, and age itself. These aircraft were rapidly becoming outdated, and in 1998, British Airways addressed this with an order for 188 Airbus narrow-body aircraft, consisting of the Airbus A319, A320, and A321, all largely for their fleet at London Heathrow and Gatwick airports. This therefore left a gap in the market for those aircraft needing replacement at Manchester and Birmingham. By August 1999, competition soon developed between Airbus offering their A318 and Boeing trying to push for their 717 to fill the gap. Initially, the 717 appeared to be the front-runner owing to the 717's faster delivery slots as soon as a year later, in the year 2000. By contrast, the A318 could be delivered by late 2002 at the earliest. The sale of these 717s would be at least partially financed by the proposed sale of older Boeing 757s back to Boeing for intended use with DHL. However, disagreements between BA and Boeing over the value of these 757s soon arose, and the talks stalled. In October 1999, British Airways placed an order with Airbus for 12 A318s, with options for a further 12. These 12 aircraft would be outfitted with 107 seats and powered by Pratt & Whitney PW6000 engines, beating out the A318's other power plant, the CFM56. Deliveries would start in January 2003, and for the interim, BA would take on 20 Boeing 737-500s to pick up the shortfall between the retirement of the 737-200 and the completion of A318 deliveries. These additional 12 units brought the initial 1998 order up to 200 Airbus narrowbodies. All was well until October 2001. Problems began arising with the selected engine, the Pratt & Whitney PW6000, and its internal design. Specifically, the engine's high-pressure compressor was in need of a redesign. The high-pressure compressor is the second main internal component of a jet engine, which compresses the air entering the engine through the fan blades at the front, increasing its temperature by compressing it into a small space. It is located deep within the engine's core, just before the ignition component of the engine, where air and fuel are mixed to produce thrust. Diagnostics concluded that the original engine design, which featured 5 sets of compressor blades, known as stages, was falling short of the originally promised thrust output and fuel consumption by approximately 6%. Pratt & Whitney outlined 2 possible solutions: an in-house fix or an outsourced compressor replacement. The in-house solution outlined the need to add 2 additional stages to the compressor, improving efficiency but adding weight. The outsourcing solution was to source a 6-stage compressor from MTU, a German supplier based in Munich. Both fixes were suggested to delay the introduction of the PW6000-equipped A318s by up to 2 years, thereby pushing back BA's fleet debut from January 2003 to 2005 at the earliest. By contrast, the tried and tested CFM56 was due to debut on the A318 in Q3 of 2003 with Air France, over a year before the Pratt & Whitney power plant. Engine problems continued into 2002, and A318 customers began switching their engine suppliers from Pratt & Whitney to CFM. However, instead of switching, in April 2002, British Airways elected to reduce their order for 12 units down to just 6, as well as canceling their 12 options. Keep in mind that, while there were also engine problems with the A318 itself, this was in the direct wake of the terror attacks in New York, and the subsequent travel downturn had dramatically soured the public's appetite to fly. In the absence of the A318, British Airways also reassigned its London-based Avro RJs to its regional bases. In return for these 6 lost A318s, BA would gain 4 Airbus A321s, claiming that they need larger aircraft in the London market. In December 2002, the remaining order for 6 A318s was cancelled, in addition to 3 A319s, in return for a further 6 A321s for use on higher-density routes from London Heathrow Airport. So that is how the A318 nearly became a much more important player in the British Airways fleet. However, the A318 famously did serve with British Airways. This is where we enter somewhat more familiar territory. After 5 years far from the minds of British Airways management, the A318 was all of a sudden thrust into the spotlight again. In February 2008, it was announced that British Airways would order the A318 once more, but only ordering 2 examples this time around. With a 32-seat, all-business class configuration, these 2 aircraft would plow their trade flying twice daily between London City Airport and New York's John F. Kennedy Airport. This was to provide a niche and quick link between the city's 2 financial centers. The service's selling points were numerous. First and foremost was the A318 size and flexibility. Unlike the 747s and A340s that flew this route into Heathrow and Gatwick, the A318 could be loaded and offloaded considerably more quickly, with it only having 32 seats compared to the 350 or more seats the competition offered. Not only did this give a feel of exclusivity to the passengers, but it also offered shorter waiting times in the terminals, allowing the plane to depart faster. London City Airport, too, was a selling point for the service. The airport is directly linked with Canary Wharf and the City of London by use of the Docklands Light Railway and is only 2.5 miles away as the crow flies, thereby allowing passengers to get between Canary Wharf and the airport in as little as 17 minutes, and to the City of London in around half an hour. The London City Airport experience was also optimized for speed, with speedy boarding being standard on these flights, allowing passengers to check in as little as 20 minutes before departure. This meant that passengers could go from Canary Wharf to Airborne in less than an hour. It was soon realized that, owing to weight restrictions at London City Airport, banning the A318 from taking off with enough fuel to reach JFK in one go, the outbound flight would require a fuel stop somewhere with a longer runway. This inadvertently played into the service's favor, with Shannon, Ireland, being selected. Shannon is not only the closest European airport to the US on the route, but is also one of the few airports with American passenger pre-clearance. This meant that passengers would be able to have their passports stamped before landing in New York, thereby saving hours after landing while queuing at customs at JFK, as it would be considered a domestic flight. On board the plane, the exclusivity did not stop. The cabin would feature a business class seat unique to BA's A318s, laid out in a 2-2 configuration. It would also feature a portable in-flight entertainment tablet and BA's pioneering on-air system, which would allow internet connectivity and the ability to send and receive texts in flight. British Airways never had a tough time marketing this service on the initial run towards operations commencing, as it was also revealed that New York at the time was the airport's most in-demand unserved route. Therefore, it was clear that services would not start off flying empty. British Airways received their first A318 G-Una on the 29th of August 2009, with it flying from Airbus's factory at Hamburg-Finkenwerder Airport to London Gatwick and arriving with a pre-approved ETOPS 180 rating. Flight testing and crew training began almost immediately, with flight crews needing to be familiar with London City Airport's steeper approach angle of 5.5 degrees compared to the standard 3.3 degrees. Training was carried out at RAF Lineham in Wiltshire, far away from prying eyes in London. Various details of this service were kept very hidden by British Airways, such as the cabin, until the first flight, showing the importance of this new flagship service. British Airways inaugurated this service on the 29th of September 2009, with it departing London City under the new designated flagship call sign of BAU Air 1, previously used on Concorde's services to New York. The flight and onboard service were received very well by the passengers, and there was a sense of relief that this service now existed at last. The then British Airways CEO, Willie Walsh, stated this on the matter. For the first time, the City of London has a tailor-made premium service to New York on its doorstep, offering the most productive possible use of time for business people traveling between the 2 great financial districts. The success of this initial service prompted BA to even look into expanding this service out of London City to other markets. These markets included Washington, D.C., Boston, and Dubai. The main negating factor to this was London City Airport's runway length, restricting the A318's range. The stop in Shannon was acceptable to U.S.-bound passengers as it allowed them to pre-clear customs. However, this would not be a luxury offered to any potential Dubai service. Therefore, a fuel stop with no customs incentive while on the ground made no commercial sense. Even the Shannon stop was not an ideal situation. Willie Walsh commented that we'd fly non-stop to JFK if we could. Routes with stops would be largely undesirable. BA reported an average load factor of 75% by February 2010. The service was famed for being an exclusive route, only being served by British Airways. However, this very nearly wasn't the case. With the development of the Bombardier C-Series program, later rebranded as the Airbus A318, the aircraft's efficiency through its clean sheet design and groundbreaking engines began to garner interest from airlines to potentially operate it on long-haul services, such as London City to New York nonstop. In fact, while the regular Bombardier CS-100's range falls slightly short of the required distance in a normal configuration, the route in an all-business class layout was taken into account as a requirement of the plane's capabilities. One such airline interested in this capability was the UK startup Odyssey Airlines. Odyssey proposed outfitting the CS-100, later the A320-100, with 38 business-class seats and connecting London City with the American Eastern Seaboard, as well as cities in the Middle East, thereby offering an all-business-class premium product as their whole business model. Odyssey would be able to outdo British Airways in terms of both available seats and flight time, while also offering a greater number of aircraft on more routes. This nearly came to fruition, with the airline placing an order with Bombardier for 10 units in 2013. However, with proposed start dates of 2014 and 2016 coming and going, British Airways never faced direct competition on this route. Such a niche service is always very fragile and is always at the whim of passenger demand, market fluctuations, and operating costs, and soon enough, these factors caught up with BA's unique service. In September 2016, it was revealed that BA would reduce their service from 11 flights a week down to just 6 by removing BA003 and BA004, the second daily rotation of the service, from the flight schedule by October that year. This would be achieved by the retirement of their second A318, GEUNB. It was flown to Cambridge for storage, then transferred to the British charter specialist Titan Airways in May of 2017, where it spent the remainder of its career. This left GUNA to fly the service alone. Now, with only one aircraft on this service, scheduled and unscheduled maintenance, as well as crew training, would now deal a blow to the service's reliability and frequency. Weeks of the year were blocked out for maintenance, with no substitute short of taking the traditional route through London's other airports at Heathrow and Gatwick, thereby making this flagship service much less convenient for its target market. Maintenance of the unique airliner also proved somewhat of a thorn in BA's side. The remaining aircraft differed in various ways from BA's other Airbus narrowbodies, namely in terms of the unique seats and their related mechanism, but most importantly, its engines. With the exception of the sole A318, British Airways A318 family uses the IAE V2500 engine as its only power plant. However, this was never available on the A318. So instead, British Airways opted for the CFM56 engine, as it was the best engine for the type and easier to maintain than the previously mentioned Pratt & Whitney PW6000. However, it was still an anomaly in the BA fleet, with it having to be sent to Madrid for maintenance with Iberia, which proved costly and inconvenient. In addition, London City Airport was losing ground to Heathrow in terms of transit time to the city with the advent of the Crossrail project, later dubbed the Elizabeth Line. This project promised to link the city to Heathrow in only 40 minutes, meaning that London City Airport's lead in this respect was now negligible. The final nail in the coffin of this now legendary service was the COVID-19 pandemic, the effects of which gave British Airways the perfect excuse to cancel the route permanently. On the 11th of March 2020, BA announced that the route would be suspended, and GUNA would be flown to Madrid for storage. This was quickly followed by a statement on the 31st of July that year, outlining that the service would be permanently discontinued. This was an unfortunate time of emergency restructuring. At the time, British Airways already had the majority of its fleet mothballed at airports across the UK and Europe. In addition, this restructuring would also lead to the firing of 36,000 employees and the retirement of their entire Boeing 747 fleet. It was clear at this time that any drag on cash flow would not be tolerated. G-UNA's last flight took place on the 17th of February 2021, leaving Madrid's Barajas airport in the early afternoon before flying northwest over the Atlantic. It landed unceremoniously at Twente Airport in the Netherlands, where it was scrapped. As for the Titan Airways sister ship GUNB, this airframe too was scrapped not long after British Airways' example. After a short but distinguished career with Titan, during which it visited places as far afield as St. Helena, Costa Rica, and Brazil, the plane was ferried to St. Athan Airport near Cardiff for scrapping on the 13th of March 2021. While the A318 never fulfilled its originally intended role with British Airways, it was still integral in terms of the airline's prestige. It highlighted the airline's boldness and willingness to still pioneer, rather than just follow the example of others. However, it was arguably cut short in its life with BA, an unfortunate victim of the pandemic, meaning it was removed swiftly and with no replacement yet on the books, leaving any resurgence of this service in doubt.